What's up guys, this is Casey Underhill and this is the second part of the sculpted tree tutorial. And this is basically where we left off last time. We had our tree modeled, we had the leaves kind of put on there. We're going to mess with those leaves a little bit more right now, but for the most part this tutorial is going to be about the materials for the tree. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide this leaf particle system here, because we really want to focus on the actual tree bark right now. And if you thought the materials for this tree were going to be simple, you were just going to hit unwrap and everything was going to be fine, it's not quite that easy. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to click on my tree and I'm going to go to the object panel. I'm going to turn on wire and display. That's going to show me, yours is probably going to show up yellow, mine's green because I have it added to a group so I can append this to a different file. Anyways, it's going to show the wireframe of the model over the top of the model, and this is important because we're going to have to go in here and we're going to mark all the seams for the tree. Now I think I already have the seams marked on this one. Let me go into edit mode. I do. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and clear those for you guys so that I can just do this all over again. So clear seams, there we go. Okay, so in making the seams for the tree, for the unwrapping process, basically what we're looking for is one seam going lengthwise through every single branch. So we're going to have one across this one, we have one across this one, we're going to have one across this one on each and every one of these little tiny branches, and it's kind of annoying and it takes a little bit of a long time, so we're probably going to do a little bit of a fast forward again. Hopefully I'm not losing you guys by doing this fast forward stuff. It's just this tutorial would take 5 hours if I sat here and did it all. The second thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to basically make a seam around the base of every single branch where it branches off from the main branch. So I guess let me go ahead and get started here instead of just explaining it to you. If I hit Control 1 on the numpad, that's going to bring me to the back side of my model, and I want to do my lengthwise seams on the back side of the model, or whatever side of your model is not being seen by the camera. That's going to save us a lot of hassle in the long run of things. So go down here and click your little edge select mode, and we're just going to select all of these edges going lengthwise, and make sure that they're connected. You don't want a seam over here and then leave this blank or anything. Make sure it's just one long connected seam going all the way through your tree. So we're gonna go ahead and go lengthwise all the way through this one. Oops. All the way down it. Zoom in to make sure I get that one. And there's a seam. So we're gonna go mesh, edge, mark seam. Boop. And we have a big red line going through there. So if you go to your camera view now, if you cannot see that red line, that's a good thing. We don't want that red line to be seen by our camera. So let me go back to my backside here. Excuse me. And next we'll do this little one right here. So we want lengthwise first. We're going to have to go this one, to this one, to this one, to this one. And while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and select the edge loops going around the base of it. Like this. So there's the seams for that one. Let's go mesh, edge, mark seam. And we're going to have to go around the base of this branch here. So let's go ahead and grab those. And there's already a seam on this side, so I don't need to reselect that one. Just going to go ahead and select all the way around this. Whoops. And while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and do the lengthwise seam as well. Oops. So I'm sure you're probably already seeing why this takes a decent amount of time, since you have to do this for every single branch. Yay, right? Nobody said it was going to be easy. And there we go. So mesh, edge, mark seam. Now that we have that one, let me show you that you got to do it for the little branches too. Come in here and select these, and we'll go around the outside, right around in here. Okay, so mesh, edge, mark seam. And you're going to have to do that for the entire tree. That's definitely not fun, but it is something that we have to do. So I'm going to go ahead and do my fast forward here. Actually, let me just load it. Open recent tree. Okay, so let me show you. Okay, here we go. So you can see I have my seams marked for every single one of these branches. Around the bases, on the back side, I've got them all going lengthwise. This is really important because it's going to make the bark not be like stretched and messed up when you go to put it on your tree. And at the same time, around these bases, we're going to have to do something a little special. So if we wanted to do a new material this way, let me show you what we get. I think I already have materials. I'm just going to delete it and make a new one so I can show you from scratch. Rename it bark. Ta-da! And I go to my compositor and I have 2 UV maps, which we will get to in a bit. But I will delete that for now. I'll just go with bark. Okay, so now that we have this whole thing marked with seams, make sure we're in edit mode, select everything, and you can see I'm already unwrapped. I'm going to go ahead and re-unwrap this for you. So I'm going to hit U, unwrap. And you can see what this kind of did down here. Actually, I think I want to use a different bark. I don't necessarily care for that one too much. So let me add a new image texture. Open textures. Wood. What do I got? Let's use this one. And I'll open that up here. That looks better. Okay, so over here in your UV mapping, there's a little option right here that says Island Select. This is what we're going to want to click on. Then make sure you hit A to deselect everything. And basically what we're looking for is we need the bark to be going the correct direction on all of our branches. So as you can see, this one here is going vertically, and we don't want that to go vertically. We don't want that at all. So we're going to have to rotate this. Rotate 90. And if you can get it to where they're not overlapping each other, it's going to help out a lot when we get to making a separate UV map for it. But it's not overly important right now. We just want to make sure that we're getting these set the correct direction. So I'm just going to kind of crowd these in here together a little bit. So I can make some room for this guy. And he's overlapping, of course. Losing my voice this morning. Okay, let's see. Let's go into here. Grab that one. This needs rotated. Let's grab this one. This needs rotated. This one rotates. Let's pull this one up here. That gives me room for this guy. Okay, zoom in here. I don't know what in the world that is. I think it's going this way. Some of these are kind of hard to tell. They do unwrap a little weird. Grab that one. Grab that one. We will rotate this one. Pull that one in here. This needs rotated. Like that. This one rotates about there. Okay, we're slowly getting there. Rotate that one. Rotate that one, and this one. Now if your bark is going up and down instead of left to right, just do the opposite. Make sure that all these ones going left to right are moving up and down. Obviously you can tell that the bark is going to be going this direction on your branch. And it doesn't matter that the bark is going to look huge right now, because we're going to change that with a mapping node when we get into the actual materials. But for right now, we just want to make sure that everything's facing the right way, that our UV is unwrapped decently. Now this tree was actually pretty easy. That's why I used it for this tutorial. Everything works out pretty nicely. It's not the best looking tree. I will show you some examples of other trees that I've done with this technique that I think look a lot better than this tree. However, this one is fairly simple, fairly easy to put everything together. So I wanted to show you this tree in the tutorial. Sometimes when you unwrap, like in a couple of the trees that I did, the branches unwrapped where they all had like a J shape to them. And then you've got to use your proportional editing, and you've got to try and like bend them back the correct way, or else your bark stretches and looks weird. So just keep that in mind. You're trying to get all of these pieces to be about as straight as possible, and you want them all going the correct direction. Okay, so it looks like we have everything. So now that I have all of that, what I want to do, actually let me show you the what it looks like here. Plop that in here, and I think, is my wireframe still on? Yeah, it is. Let me go ahead and turn my wireframe off so you can see. And this is what we're looking like. Obviously the bark is a little large, so if I add in a mapping node, go input, texture coordinates, pull that back a little, add vector mapping. I'm going to take the UV and plug that into the vector of the mapping node, and then the vector of the mapping node into the vector of the image texture. And for scale, let's try 3. Well, it looks a little bit better. Looks a little bit better. However, you will see a problem. It's not hugely evident right here. This is what's called a seam, where your texture does not match with the texture on the other side. We have these seams, unfortunately, because we had to put a seam around the bottom of each of these branches. Some of them are going to be more noticeable than others. Actually, this bark didn't turn out too bad with the seams. When I made this tree, it was actually a dead tree, and the bark the seams are just terrible. But you can see the seams, and we don't want the seams. Since we went through the trouble of hand modeling this tree because it's going to be close up to the camera, so we're going to need to hide those seams, and I'm about to show you the roundabouts way of doing that. So let me go move that a little bit. Okay, so if I go to my vertex groups, I'm going to go down to my UV maps. I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to name this seams. So for this one, you're going to have to re-unwrap. If you tab into edit mode and you look, the UV seams for seams UV map and bark are exactly the same. We don't want them to be the same. Now, the best way to do this is to go back into your tree and find where you marked all the seams from your first one, clear all of those seams, and then make seams in different areas of your tree. So you see how I have red seams going up this way. For my next UV map, what I would do is I would come in here and select this part and make a seam going that way. And then around the base of the tree here, I might say, no, let's not do that one, and let's do this one. Basically, you want to re-unwrap the tree, but you want your seams to be in a different location than your first unwrap. I find that that's just too much of my time. So the way I usually do it is I select everything, Smart UV project, and you get this crazy disaster. It unwraps every little teeny tiny part of the tree, And honestly, it really doesn't look all that great, but it will give you slightly decent results for what we're looking for. So now that we have a second UV map, there's one more thing that we need to do. Let's go to our default. Oh, actually no, let me go back to my compositor. Okay, so here in your image editor here, we're going to add a new image. And let me see what my where's my textures? There we go. Wood. What's my size of my picture? 700 by 700. Okay, so I'm going to make a new image. I'm going to go ahead and make that 700 by 700 since that's the size of my bark picture. And you can see it's all black on here. So in order to draw on this, we're going to need to make it an image texture. So add texture, image texture. And right now it's named Untitled 1. I'm just going to rename that to Seams. And then I can go down here in my drop down. And let's find it. Seams. Okay, so now that I have that, let's go back to our default view. And I think we're going to need the wireframe back on. So let me go to my object panel, click wire. And we're going to texture paint. Now if yours doesn't come up with the right texture, make sure you click on your textures tab. And there will be a bunch of image textures around in here. Just make sure, see, this is your tree. You do not want to draw on your actual bark of your tree. So make sure that you find the one that comes up black, completely black. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint, and this needs to be white, completely white. Strength needs to be 1. And we're just going to paint around anything that is going to have a seam. So like this spot here, we shall paint right around it. And it's okay if you get a little extra around here. It's not going to make a huge difference. If you do want to change that, if you do want to fix where you've messed up, you can always just go back to black. Fill in that little area. And back to white. So now we've got that one done. We're going to come up here, we're going to do this one. Just painting around any place where you have a seam. So basically around the base of every branch. You don't necessarily need to do the seams going on the back side because those are hidden by the camera. So just keep that in mind. You can see now there is a little bit of an issue with this where your UV unwraps, they don't quite match up. Let me see, maybe it might be better with my bark. Kinda, sorta, but it kind of messed everything up on me. Hold on. I think, let me go back. Just undo these here. Sometimes you get where it just draws on random parts of your tree when you're drawing on other parts. Usually that means that your UVs are off. That means that you're overlapping somewhere or you're not using the right UV map. So I went back to my original one where I marked all the seams to make sure it's nice and neat, where I made sure it's not overlapping. Everything should be okay. So let me go ahead, now that I say that, watch it mess up on me. Let me go back and try this again here. This is another long part that I will fast forward through just to show you guys how to do it, because this is, honestly, this took me probably the longest of everything from this tree to figure out how to do. And I kept trying to find tutorials and stuff on it. I think there's one guy online that does a tutorial about this, and his voice was like the most annoying voice I've ever heard in an online video. It took me like 4 times trying to sit down and watch it to figure out what the heck was going on. I hated it every time. Okay. Okay, that should be good enough. So again, it still did some of this crazy where it painted white on parts that I didn't necessarily paint. It happens sometimes. You just gotta let it go. Just make sure that you get those seams covered. You're gonna want to go through and do all of these. I'm just gonna show you a couple of parts because this is gonna take forever if I don't. Once you have that done, go back to your object mode. We're gonna go back to our compositor and your seam paper image, whatever you want to call it, right down here. It's going to look like this. It's going to have a bunch of little white spots and dots all over it. And very first thing that you want to do is click Image, Save as Image. If you don't save that as an image, the next time you go to open this project, this will just be gone. It will be blank black all over again. You will not have it. So do make sure that you save it. Okay, so now that we have that, this right here is this picture. So I'm going to move that up. This right here is my bark picture. I'm going to duplicate that. And I want my mapping node into all of these. Actually, I'm going to have to duplicate my mapping node too. Yeah. And I'm going to get rid of my texture coordinate node, because now what I want is an attribute node. So input, attribute. And let's see, I need one into that bark, one into that. Okay, so that one should be okay. So this attribute node, this is going to be what defines which UV map we're going to use. Since I have bark and seams, bark is the one that I want to be more apparent. So I'm going to click bark. Make sure you name it exactly the same as what you have it in your UV maps, capital letters and everything, and then connect the vector to the mapping. And what that does is it tells this image to use the seam, the unwrapping seams from the bark unwrapping that you did. And then we're going to duplicate that attribute node and write seams. I'm going to plug that one into this one so that now this image is using the unwrap from your other texture. So now that we have that, we're going to add a color mix RGB. And I think the bottom texture needs to be in the top. I might have to change that, we'll see. And then the second one goes the bottom. And then this one here, this is your white and black map that we created. I'm just going to drag that into the factor. So let me turn off the wireframe. Plug that into my diffuse. Turn off the wireframe so we can get a better look at this here. Aha, look at that. So now where we put our seams, where we drew over the seams, it uses, it's kind of hard to explain. Anyways, it's using this bark, but wherever we have our white painted around the bark, it's using the other seam unwrap. So you're getting two different unwraps and it's mixing them together, and it basically creates a much smoother transition from one picture to another. Hopefully I got this set up right. I think so. Okay, so anyways, that's pretty much the hardest part of this entire thing. It's just making sure that that's all set up. So let me go, let's see, texture, image texture, and let me open up my, where's that, textures, wood, was it 36, was it Bark Deciduous 36? Okay, there's my normal map. Make sure I click on non-color data. add vector normal. Going to add shader, glossy shader. Plug that into there, that into there. Plug this into my normal map here. Pull that out a little bit. We'll add shader, mix shader. Plop that there, that there. And then we want, I'm just going to, I think, duplicate this. And then I want to open my specularity map. And add converter color ramp. If you've watched any of my other tutorials, this is just the basic setup for doing materials. If you want to get a little more fancy than this, you can, obviously. Let's turn that way down because we really don't want our tree to be really glossy. I'm going to actually set the roughness of our glossy shader to a 0.4. And make sure that you connect the mapping node into both of those textures, and I'm using the one with the bark seams. Let's plug that in like that. And there we go. So you can see places that I haven't painted over have this weird line running through them, and places that I have painted over don't look quite nearly as bad. I do have another tutorial on my website. If you don't want to get involved in all of this process, there's a quick trick that you can use using like Photoshop or GIMP, where once you finish your picture, you can use your clone brush and just clone pieces of the tree into one another, and it'll hide those seams. I would say it's more for artistic people than technical people, and if you're not real familiar with the node system and cycles, I would recommend going and checking out that video. However, this one does do it procedurally, so we can render everything out the way we want to. So now that we have that, I think our tree is looking just about right. Do I have a light? Do I have a light set up here? Yeah, I do. You can go ahead and click on the rendered view, kind of see what we're looking at here. Da, da, da. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. That is not bad at all. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. Sorry guys, my computer is a tad slow. Okay, so it did get rid of some of our seams. Let me double check that. I wonder what it looks like if I switch these two. Yep, I was afraid of that. We didn't want that. Switch those back. There we go. Okay, so now that we have that, I just want to go over how to make your leaves look a little bit better. Last time we made them look, I don't know, kind of paper-ish. They're not... Also, I want to get randomized colors. I can show you how to get random colors. So let me go back to my solid view. And my leaves are on layer 2. So let me click on my leaves. And this is the setup we left with last time, minus this mix shader and minus these two right here. Actually, just get rid of those. This is what we left off with last time. This is how we made our leaves. So I'm going to show you how to get a random color from these leaves. So we're going to add color, mix RGB. We'll plug our main leaf texture into color 1. Plug the mix into our diffuse. And then we want a converter color ramp plugged into color 2. And what I want to do is I want to add a bunch of different lines to this. So I'm hitting that plus sign. 4 lines is usually about what I go with. You can go with more if you want different colors. Let's see. Now, normally you'd want to go with green, different shades of green, like a dark green, and then a little bit lighter, and then lighter yet. Just to show you exactly how this works, I want to make these completely opposite, polar opposite colors, so that you can really get an idea of how this is working. So I have blue, purple, yellow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add input object info. And there's a little node right here that says random. So I'm going to plug that into the factor of the color ramp. And that'll give me random leaf colors. The mix value 0.5. Should I do 0.5? 0.5, I guess. Yeah, whatever. Okay. So there is something I should say. I used to put the mix node for doing the colors at the very end. I would plug everything into the end of this thing. And that's not how you do this, because you still want that normal map and you still want that specularity map to be over the top of your colors. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and give this a render. And alright guys, so this is the render that I got for my tree. This is obviously, like I said, I put the bright colors in so you could see. It's mixed half and half with the, I think it's a brown leaf that I used. So you can see the reds, you can see the purples, not so much the blues, but it's in there. It just kind of looks purplish because it's mixed with the brown leaf. But you can see how it gives you a nice random assortment of colors. So if you pick a lot of greens, dark greens, light greens, that sort of thing, it gives you a nice mixture of colors on your leaves. And the bark turned out decent. It's not the best bark I've ever done, but not bad. If you wanted to add more moss or more grunge to your tree, you can always do that. If you want to put more leaves or less leaves, you can do that. But for the most part, we have our tree completed. So now that I have this tree completed, I'm going to show you some of the other trees that I have made with this process. Okay, so here is one of the trees that I created. This is a little movie that I made for a friend, but you can see I modeled this tree and put the leaves on it, and it's got a little swing hanging from it. The leaves are a little sparse. I probably could have went a little bit more. It was a much more detailed tree than the rest of them. And here's one close-up. Again, this is for a movie that I made for a friend. Anyways, this is a cherry blossom tree. This is nice and close-up, so you can see all the little nooks and crannies and branches. This one I did create just a teeny tiny bit different than the ones that I showed you, because I actually made little tiny twigs and made a bunch of different particle systems to go off of. Unfortunately, you cannot hide seams that way. You just have to hand model the base of the tree, and then you connect all these particle systems. But that might be another tutorial for another time. Let me show you. I think I have one more tree to show you. Okay, so here's the last tree that I have to show you. This is a pine tree. So this is a little bit different. Again, this is basically a particle system that I used for the pine needles, even though they kind of look a little bit furry, a little bit like hair. I thought it turned out pretty nicely, and the tree itself looks pretty decent. The bark, I got the bark to look really good, so I was pretty happy with this tree. But this just shows you, with a little bit of practice, with a little bit of trying, with a little bit of patience, the different amounts of trees that you can make, and how they're all very interesting and special in their own way. You don't have to always rely on the sapling generator to make things and then not being able to hide seams or show them up close. So if you guys are interested, or if you need any help, you have any questions, make sure you go down to my comment section. If you like the video, why not subscribe? I try to put out a new tutorial video just about every week. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed and learned a little bit. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. Thank you guys for watching.